mathematicians. Today we're going to be learning about fractions, more specifically about dividing fractions by fractions. So, to get us started, we have 1 over 2 divided by 1 over 4. First, we're going to represent 1 out of 2. So here we have a rectangle that has one shaded part out of 2 equal pieces to represent 1 out of 2. Then, since we're dividing it by 1/4, we're going to take another rectangle, cut it in the opposite direction. So this one is cut horizontally. So the next one we're going to cut vertically. And we're going to shade in 1 out of 4 equal parts. Now that we have both our fractions, we're going to go back to our first model. And we're also going to cut this one in 2/4 vertically, okay? And then we're going to go ahead to our second model, and we're also going to cut this in halves horizontally, okay? So that both our models kind of match each other. If you see the rectangles, they're both a 2x4, all right? In this rectangle, for our blue parts, we have 2 pieces. And if we want to figure out how many times 1/4 goes into a half, we have to figure out how many times these pieces go into here. Well, here we have 4 pieces. So in the blue we have 2, and the pink we have 4. So 4 over 2 is equal to 2. And I'm going to show you why. So here we want to figure out how many of these pieces fit in here. So we're going to count 1, 2. That's one group. 1, 2. That's a second group. So these pieces fit in here a total of 2 equal times, okay? And that's why our answer is 2. So if we didn't have our model and we wanted to divide, we would do 1 over 2 divided by 1 over 4. So we would keep the first fraction, which is 1 over 2, and multiply it by the reciprocal of our second fraction, which is 1 over 4. Now, the reciprocal of 1 over 4 is 4 over 1. So here we have 1 over 2 times 4 over 1. We're going to multiply the numerator by the numerator. 1 times 4 is equal to 4. And then the denominator by the denominator. So 2 times 1 is equal to 2. 4 over 2 can be rewritten as 2 because 4 divided by 2 is equal to 2. And we got the same answer. So let's do another example. So here we have 3/4 divided by 1/6. We're going to take a rectangle and represent 3/4. So we have 3 shaded parts out of 4 equal pieces. Then we're going to cut another rectangle in the opposite direction, so vertically, and we're going to represent 1 out of 6. So we have 1 shaded part out of 6 equal pieces. Now going back to our first model, we're also going to divide this vertically into 6 pieces so that our rectangles kind of match. And then here for our blue one, we're going to cut it horizontally into 4 equal pieces as we did here. Now, in our blue rectangle, we have 4 pieces. And in our pink rectangle, let's see how many we have. So we have 18 pieces. And essentially, we want to figure out how many times does 4 go into 18. So we're going to represent that as 18 over 4, which is the same thing as 4 and 2/4, which can be simplified if we divide the numerator and the denominator by 2. We get 4.5. So let me show you how we went from 18 over 4 to 4 2/4. So here we have 4 pieces. So we need to figure out how many groups of these pieces we could have in this pink one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, that's one group. 1, 2, 3, 4, that's another group. 1, 2, 3, 4, that's another group. 1, 2, 3, 4, that's another group. 1, 2, well, we don't have enough to complete a group, but that's okay. Here, we got a total of 4 groups. That's how we got our whole number. And then we have 2 pieces left, extra pieces left over that are not enough to make a whole group, but we know that it's 2 out of 4 because 4 pieces would make a whole group. So then we're going to go ahead and simplify 4 2/4 into 4.5. So that's how we got our mixed number using our model. Now, if we didn't have our model, what we would have to do is just divide it algebraically. So here, we're going to take this division problem and change it into a multiplication problem. So 3 over 4 divided by 1/6 is the same thing as taking 3/4 and multiplying by the reciprocal. So 3/4 times 6 over 1. And so then we just multiply normally, as I said. So 3 times 6 is equal to 18. And then 4 times 1 is equal to 4. This can be rewritten, but first we could simplify by dividing the numerator and the denominator by 2. 18 divided by 2 is 9. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And then 9 over 2 is equivalent to 4.5. So here we have another example. 1 over 2 divided by 3/5. First, let's represent 1 over 2. And that can be represented by one shaded piece out of 2 equal parts. Then we're going to go ahead and represent 3/5. And we're going to cut this in the opposite direction, so vertically. So here we have 3 out of 5 equal parts. We're going to go back to our original model, well, our first model, and cut it vertically into 5 parts as well. And then we're going to take this blue one and cut it horizontally into 2 parts. So we see how our rectangles kind of match. In our blue part, we have 6 pieces. And then for our pink one, we have 5. So we can't take these 6 and expect to make a hole here because we only have 5. So that's why our answer in this case is only 5 out of 6, because we can't even make a hole by taking these blue pieces and putting them there, because we only have 5 pieces out of the 6 that we need to make a hole. So now let's take these fractions and divide them without our model. So we're going to take our first fraction, which is 1 over 2, and multiply it by the reciprocal of 3 over 5, okay? So numerator times numerator, 1 times 5 is equal to 5. Denominator times denominator, 2 times 3 is equal to 6. So we get 5 out of 6. So let's do one final example. So we're going to take 4 over 5 and represent that using a model. So for that model, we're going to have 4 parts that are shaded out of 5 equal pieces. And then since we're dividing it by 2/3, remember that the second rectangle is cut in the opposite direction, so vertically. And here we have 2/3, okay? So we're going to go back to our first model and cut it into 2/3 vertically. And for our second model, we're going to cut it into 5ths horizontally. And then we're going to see how many pieces we have here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So here we have 10 pieces. Now let's see how many we have for the pink. So for our pink, we have 12 pieces. So here we have 10, and there we have 12. And we're going to write that as 12 over 10, which can be written as 1 whole and 2/10 if we take our improper fraction and write it as a mixed number. And then we could divide both the numerator and the denominator by 2 to get 1 and 1/5. So let me show you how 1 and 2/10 came about using our models. So we know that we're going to take these 10 pieces and see how many fit over there. So once we get 10 pieces, that's going to be a whole group. So we have our 10 pieces, that's 1 whole group, and then we have 2 additional pieces here. And that's where we get the 2 out of 10. So the 10 completed 1 whole group, and then we have 2 out of 10 pieces left over, which then simplifies to 1 and 1/5. So if we didn't have our models, we would take these 2 fractions and divide them. So first we would keep the fraction 4 over 5, and then multiply it by the reciprocal, and the reciprocal of 2 over 3 is 3 over 2. So numerator times numerator, 4 times 3 is 12, and then denominator times denominator, 5 times 2 is 10. We could divide both the numerator and the denominator by 2. 12 divided by 2 is 6, 10 divided by 2 is 5, and this can be written as a mixed number. And that's it for dividing fractions by fractions.